The Legend of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 1, Chapter 9, Nights. Donatello ascended the steps slowly and pulled the manhole cover back to reveal the grand world above. He found himself climbing out into the darkness of the New York night. It was humbling. The endless space of sky above was twinkling with the beauty of stars and air traffic. The road was smothered with colourful but heavily polluting beasts of metal roaring down the organised grids of open tarmac with immense power. The smell of rotting refuse and toxic fumes was disgusting to most, but to Donatello was heavenly, as he was so new to and excited by the surface world. He subconsciously dealt with these emotions, though, as he felt he needed to focus more on a quick way to April's apartment. There were not enough small alleys en route to use them to avoid being detected, and he needed to be able to see clearly all the surrounding buildings to know exactly where he was. He glanced upwards in the hope the sky would inspire him, and then, rather like a meteor, the answer collided with him without warning. The roofs, of course. He removed a grappling hook from around his belt and shot it at the top of the building. Once he was certain this was secure, he reattached this to his belt and began to slowly retract the wire into his belt while scaling the scummy and grimy brickwork of the building with great athletic prowess. Once he had reached the peak of the structure and was on the roof, he got his bearings. He mumbled a few words like velocity, degrees, and northwest, painted a detailed, annotated, and colour-coded picture of his journey in his head, and then started sprinting with impressive speed. Years of practice had most certainly paid off. He reached the edge of the building and took off with a long jump the Olympic Committee would die for, and promptly landed on the next building like a true ninja without a single sound. After only 5 minutes of sprinting, he arrived at April's apartment and rang the intercom. Before anyone could answer, a man with a briefcase walked past the house, and Donatello had to duck behind a large pot plant near the door so as to not be seen. The man did briefly glance in Donatello's direction, then shook his head, dismissing the idea that anything could be lurking in the shadows. A female voice aged about 40 answered the intercom. "Who's there?" Donatello, having made sure the man with the briefcase was gone and no one else was coming, crept carefully over to the intercom. "Hello?" Donatello muttered nervously. I'm a friend of April's. Can I come in?" Amanda O'Neill glared perplexed at the intercom system. Surely April would have mentioned if friends of hers were coming to her home. April knew she had to give her at least a week's notice of friends coming around. She had just vacuum cleaned the carpet and had a ton of extra training to do for her work as a surgeon. She hated her daughter being a distraction from her own life. Didn't she realise that her life was more important? She saved the lives of hundreds of people. What on earth was her daydreaming mistake of a daughter ever going to contribute to the world by having friends or dreams of her own? Minutes later, Amanda opened the apartment door, ready to give April's friend very loud advice on why he shouldn't be disturbing her. Instead, she saw Donatello as a giant turtle, stared at him for 15 seconds, opened her mouth as if to say something, then rolled her eyes back into her skull and collapsed on top of him unconscious. I'm not really a hugger, so if you could... Oh, you appear to have fainted?" Donatello announced, confused. April heard this, rammed her bedroom door open and hurtled over the sofa, pushing aside Donatello and rushing to her mother. "You!" she screamed, her face expressing partial delight and horror. "Your mother is breathing. This is your mother, right? Not some crazy woman who... Oh, it's because I look like this that she fainted." "Well done," April hissed, icily clapping slowly. "Is your dad home too?" asked Donatello. "No, he works nights at a laboratory." "I love science!" Donatello shouted, waving his hands and clumsily whacking April in the face. Sorry, he called out. Meanwhile, Leonardo followed his father from the lair and through the access tunnels of the sewers until they reached a set of monumental steps to the surface. After you, father, Leonardo said to Splinter as they carefully ascended the steps and moved the cover aside. Once a day, Splinter would climb to the top of a nearby building and look over the vast city. Some days he would meditate, and others he would bring along a radio Donatello had built for him, which followed police radio waves. When he heard of anything he felt the police might not be able to handle, or get to quicker than he could, he would then stealthily move to the scene of the crime, defend any innocent civilians caught up in the incident, and incapacitate those on the wrong side of the law. On occasion, he would simply see potential crime himself and intervene. It was a cold November night in 2005 when Splinter had started doing this. During the previous year, he had mentally beat himself into trying to care for his children better after an unfortunate incident with Raphael, the one that had left Raphael with the scar on his face. The trouble was that Master Splinter needed food and other supplies, but as a mutated, unemployed single father of 4 rat, money was not pouring in. Master Splinter strongly opposed crime and refused to resort to theft. However, he could not get a job as he figured nobody would be willing to hire someone that looked like a giant rat. So, on that foggy November Wednesday, while Splinter was meditating on the roof of a pizza parlour, the blind owner was trying to cross the road. He was about to be crushed by a lorry because he had dropped the lead of his guide dog and the animal had run away frightened. It didn't help that the lorry driver was distracted by talking to his girlfriend on his mobile and had also taken his eyes off the road completely to check the time on his watch. Splinter threw 2 of his trusty metal throwing stars at the vehicle. Master Splinter always had at least 4 handy as they were his personal weapon of choice. The stars had 4 spikes, all of which were sharp and could easily take someone's eye out if thrown at the right angle. Both sides of each star, right in the middle, were engraved with a green footprint symbol.